Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions with my co-host Stacie here to talk about Dawn, her dad, and the tractor. Good news, Stacie. Reid Price does not have to commit a crime to get us to see this movie now.
I know, right?
Yes. It's now available in the U.S. on Tubi.
As well as available in Canada on that platform now, too. Which is super exciting news because we've been waiting like a year since we first heard about this movie in order to watch it.
Yeah.
And now we've seen it. So here we are to talk about it.
Yes, this movie has come up in multiple interviews with Reid Price as well as Shelley Thompson, where we're talking about her book, Roar, which was based on the screenplay for this movie. And so now we finally are able to talk about this movie. And we wanted to cover it, and now we are.
And now we are.
So the movie's description reads as follows. After the death of her mother, a young trans woman returns to the family farm where she sees her father and sister for the first time since transition. The movie was written and directed by Shelley Thompson, and the original release date was May 27th, 2021. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast. If you haven't actually watched the movie, I highly recommend you go check it out and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening to one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please subscribe. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to our channel. And you have to appreciate that the fact that just yesterday, I would not have been able to say all that without launching into a major coughing fit.
I know, you're doing much better today.
Yes, I am. All right, so Stacie, your overall thoughts on this movie.
Okay, so like I said, we waited a long time to watch this movie, and I'm really glad that we finally were able to. I can see why this is an award-winning film. This film did win awards. Reid Price won an award for this film, and he did great in it. He does great in it.
Yeah, it was a very
naturalistic
performance, I thought.
I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a really nice little film. And, of course, it's a very important topic.
Yes, it's very timely.
I feel like, they did a really good job just kind of presenting this slice of life in this girl's story. It's not some giant full of action and adventure story. It's just like, here is my life.
I would argue that this is the type of film that Hollywood should be making more of, and this is not a Hollywood production,
right?
But Hollywood should be making these type of films, other than more so than they the home run movies that they have to make $200 billion on to make any kind of profit. They should be focusing on smaller projects that maybe won't make as much money, but they'll earn more from, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I think the current business of movie making is unsustainable if we have to make $2 billion dollars to make any kind of profit. But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. It's a slice of life kind of drama movie that I live for. I'm a sucker for movies that are that focus on father-daughter, father-son relationships. I tend to like those stories, which is why I was drawn to Sullivan's Crossing so much, because I appreciated that storyline. And, speaking of Sullivan's Crossing, this movie kind of reminded me of that show sometimes. During the course of it. There was, the father, played by Rob Wells, kind of reminded me of Sully a little bit. Minus the alcoholism. I don't think that was part of his character, but he definitely kind of reminded me of Sully at times. The kind of person that has a hard time expressing their emotions, the stoic type.
We definitely have a similar setting, right? We're in very rural Canada.
Yeah.
And so I guess I can see that. Even
the suggestion at one point, the small little background plot line of there being financial problems, which was right in the background. That kind of very much reminded me.
That definitely was a very Sully-like moment. And even to the point where, he didn't really end up sharing that with anybody.
No.
Those were all just private moments, that never really became a bigger part of the story in this film, other than the fact that they fixed themselves before he had to really seek help from the family members.
I have a problem with the ending. I'm not sure how I feel about the ending.
Okay.
How this movie ends, but I guess we'll get there when we talk about it more.
Well, what I have at the end is I feel like we need a sequel.
Yeah, okay.
I just kind of want to know what happens next for these characters.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's my issue. It's like it just kind of ends, and we don't know where some of these guys are going.
Yeah. So, Shelley, let's do it.
Yeah, let's
Sequel
do it.
time. We want to know what happens next.
You could happen in Dawn, her dad in the Tractor 2 or Roar 2, whichever comes first. All right, so do we just want to get into this thing, or is there more to say?
We have a lot of great I was going to say guest cast in this, but it's not really a guest cast in a film. It's just the cast.
Right.
There's a lot of characters in this.
Yes.
I tried to take note of most of the actors' names when we meet them, but there was a handful of them that stood out because they're people that we do recognize from the other projects that we cover.
Right.
Of course, this is the Deep Dive TV podcast. We mostly talk about TV shows.
We don't do movies very often, but every once in a while we do.
Every once in a while we do. And of course, the reason we're doing this one, if you came across this video on random and aren't familiar with us and what we've done in the past, we cover 2 shows that are filmed in Nova Scotia that both have Reid Price in it.
Mm-hmm.
And those are From on MGM Plus, where he plays Tom the bartender, and Sullivan's Crossing, which airs in Canada on CTV and in the US on the CW. And Reid plays Rob yes. Shannon in Sullivan's Crossing. Took me a second. So, we've spoken to Reid Price. He has interviewed with us multiple times, and, the fact that he was in this film came up. And that was like, oh, we want to check that out. And then we had the pleasure of speaking with Shelley Thompson, of course, who we mentioned that already, about her book Roar. And the whole thing just kind of fell into our laps a little bit, right?
Right.
The reason that Shelley came into our radar is because of a very small part that she plays in Sullivan's Crossing.
Right.
And then it was like, wait a minute. This is the same Shelley Thompson that made that movie we've been trying to watch.
Yes.
She wrote it, she directed it, she produced it. Yeah. So we have, personal connections now to the cast and crew of this film.
Speaking of which, we did an interview with her, and we're going to include the clips right here. So some excerpts from that. So we're going to show you that real quick, and then we'll be right back.
And we will do a scene-by-scene analysis of the film.
In 2020, I made my first feature film, which was called Dawn, Her Dad, and the Tractor. And it was intended as a family film to really bring the focus onto the struggles that trans individuals have sometimes in reconnecting with families. Many trans people are, vilified by their families and they lose contact with their families. And so it's always been very important to me to create the dialogue and make sure that people understand how important family and community support and respect is for the trans community, especially at this time, which is a pretty frigging awful time for the trans community and frightening. So the movie has done well, and it has hit its target of families. I had written the movie and made the movie as a director. And what's wonderful about making film and TV is what an extraordinarily collaborative process it is, and how that creative process is, feeds everybody involved in it.
So we first learned about the story from talking to Reid Price, looking into him and realizing that he was part of this movie. Can you tell us what it was like working with Reid Price?
Oh, a joy on every level. And I think everybody you speak to will say that. Reid's a star. He's all the best parts of a star. He's super talented. He's very collaborative. He's very kind. He's very funny. I can't say anything bad. I can't think of anything bad to say about him, even if I wanted to, and I don't. But
we had a chance to talk with him, kind of like we're talking with you now, and it was definitely a pleasure talking to him. He's, in addition to being really passionate about his work, he seemed like a really down to earth kind of guy. So it was really a lot of fun to talk to him.
So you had the short story, or the short film rather, you have the feature film, you have the novel. Obviously this story is important to you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So where did Dawn come from?
where was your basis of like creating this world for Dawn and her family?
Well, I have a child who's a trans individual.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, at the moment, there are governments and individuals and calling for trans people to be invisible and calling for the removal of their human rights and calling for removing their healthcare rights.
Mm-hmm.
So the story came from a need to say, look, the world is bigger than a lot of people think it is in terms of the binary.
Mm-hmm.
The notion of a man and a woman, and that's all there is, has been shown for thousands and thousands of years to simply not encompass what people are made of on this planet. That's just a fact. Nobody's making that up to make somebody mad, or nobody's choosing to live a life where they're outside what is perceived to be the norm so that they can be vilified and hurt and murdered. And, it's not a world you're going to choose to live in if you're comfortable where you sit from a gender standpoint. So that's where I came from. I came from a place of trying to show that trans individuals should be given the same respect and consideration and love and opportunity, and that any person is given, and that the parent of trans children hold their lives in their hands when they're offering them recognition and clarity and help to be who they are. And I don't know if either of you are parents, but when you have a child, when you have a child, the only thing that matters to you is your child's health and safety. Absolutely. That's it. It's pretty simple. Mm-hmm. If you have a child, you love that child, you want to make their way in the world as easy, happy, fruitful as you can. And that was my goal. Is to say to people, look, kids need their families. Trans kids need their families. They need to be able to be who they are. It's not a choice. It's not a religious question. These things are not the truth. Those things are not the truth. And so,
sorry, go on.
Pardon me, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, like, I happen to be a mental health awareness advocate, and a lot of where I approach issues is from that standpoint. And the statistics suggest that, like, people who are trans or in that community in general tend to do way better in life when they have strong support from their families. As opposed to when they don't. I mean, I guess that's true of all of us, but that just
I know, but you are absolutely right, and I thank you so much for saying that. The numbers bear out exactly what you say, Dave. And if you had a child and the child was born into the world, and you recognized and they recognized that they needed to be someone else to stay alive, what is your choice as a parent?
Right.
You have no choice but to say, I'm going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it extraordinary that the narrative has shifted so dramatically and so cruelly. They have a lack of access to knowledge about these specific individuals. They haven't had conversations with trans people. They don't understand what the experience of transition is. They don't, and I'm not a trans individual. I'm not an expert on what that is. So all I can do is keep being available to listen and trying to do that stuff, and trying to raise trans individuals up and advocate for their for respect of their community. And I think things are probably a little less contentious here in Canada at the moment. But as I say, I don't think we can be complacent.
Mhm.
I just don't think there's any room for complacency. And, it's interesting, Dave, that you talk about the mental health aspect, because there's a sense that you can turn trans individuals' experience into a mental health condition.
Right.
When
Which
it's not a mental health condition, but it becomes a mental health issue.
Mhm.
When people are not granted the same opportunities or respect or consideration that other people are. Of course, it's going to become a mental health issue, because like any other marginalized community, you're being vilified, and it's about defining our humanity. It's as important with the trans individuals as it is with the Indigenous community and the people of color who don't feel they've been heard or seen. But it's about our humanity. It's about recognizing that we owe each other the opportunity to speak and to be heard. And, so yeah. The story of the tractor was a story that was told to me by a friend who come on, buddy, get down. There was an individual who was a friend of theirs whose father was actually, I can't keep her off the desk. I don't know what the issue is. And if I shut her out, she'll scream. Like she starts to go, why can't I come in? Why can't I come in? So I'm not going to. Anyway, so the story of the tractor came from the germ of a story about a young man who was estranged from his father, or struggling with his dad. And his father was diagnosed with cancer. And the young man decided he had to reconcile with him and try and get that relationship back on track. And part of that was, it turned into them working on a tractor together that the dad had loved, but knew he was never going to drive again. So that germ of the story came from there. And then it translated, and the character of Dawn evolved and emerged. And my child grew up in a rural Nova Scotia spot. And so we were really aware of that community and what that meant. And certainly in terms of growing up queer in a small town, that was very much part of our world. Sorry, go ahead.
Can you tell us about the Dawn Fund?
Oh yeah, the Dawn Fund. The movie, there's a prize in Nova Scotia called the Masterworks Prize, and it's given to a work of art that is recognized to have special significance for Nova Scotia in quality and representation of the province. And so it's a big deal. I hope that movie isn't my masterwork, because I'm not dead yet. But I'm very proud that it won that prize. And so I was able to it's a cash prize, which I shared with my producer, and I was able to take a portion of that prize and set up this fund. And then for young trans individuals who need help and support in Nova Scotia. And it's being administered by the Phoenix Youth Project in Nova Scotia.
All right, and we are back. That's some very good stuff from Shelley. Yeah, so it's kind of funny because some of these people that are in this film, like Rob Wells, for instance, I thought I'd seen him in other projects. But I looked through his page on the Internet Movie Database, And there's only one thing that he's seen that he's been in that I actually saw, and that was a movie called Goon with Sean William Scott that Amy Groening, who plays Tammy in this film, was also in.
So did you see that film?
Yeah, I saw Goon.
Okay, so that must be where you're recognizing them both from.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't think so in regards to Tammy, because Tammy was like a young teenager back then.
Because you told me off air that you recognized her too, but couldn't figure out why.
Yeah. But yes.
So Rob Wells, our audience will probably recognize him. He is most famously known as playing Ricky on Trailer Park Boys.
And he's been in a lot of trailers.
Yeah, he's one of the Trailer Park Boys. As well as that's where the connection with Shelley Thompson comes as well. She plays Barb on Trailer Park Boys. And unfortunately neither of us have seen any of that, so we're not familiar with that production, but I'm sure our listeners will recognize Rob from that. And
he has 67 overall acting credits for himself. And we'll just get into the scene by scene.
Okay.
All right. So the movie begins with Dawn riding on a bus, and we don't know who she is at this point.
Yeah, and we might as well introduce her. Dawn is played by Myra V. Henry.
And this is only her second acting credit.
Yeah, this is her only credit other than a short that she was in 2017.
And that was for Nana Ana, which also happened to be about a trans girl. So she's riding on a bus on her way to the family. She also does have a directorial stint for Transient Happiness and a directorial credit for a short called Margotland. So we then cut to John Andrews, who's walking around his house. He's looking at objects that remind him of his wife, because his wife recently died.
Yeah, he finds a stray strand of her hair, on the stairs, and he's unable to discard it, right? His wife has just passed, and he doesn't know what to do. He can't just throw away this piece of her hair, so he carries it to the bedroom and puts it on her hairbrush. And I think that was just a beautiful detail.
And apparently he wasn't there for the death, and that's something that confused me a little bit. And neither was Tammy, one of his daughters. We see Reid Price's Byron and Dawn's sister Tammy, played by Amy Groening. She has 35 acting credits, including Goon, which I mentioned before. And
she's in a lot of Christmas movies, I noticed.
Yes, her resume reminded me of a typical Nova Scotian film acting troupe resume.
Yeah, she has Bone Cage on her IMDb, which is another film we'd love to watch that so many of the From and Sullivan's Crossing cast members have been a part of that movie.
Yep. So Tammy and Byron are in the car, and she asks Byron to stop her from going off on her brother Donald. And he tells her that she will not do that. Tammy has a tearful reunion with her dad, and it seems like neither one of them were there for the death of their mother and wife.
Yeah, Tammy wants to know why Dad didn't tell her to come, and he's just like, it happened so fast. And he's upset because he wasn't there, but Jenny was there. We'll meet Jenny later. And they ask, well, where's Donald? Nobody's heard from him. And, we'll soon learn that the family hasn't even spoken to Donald in, 5 years?
Something like that.
And meanwhile, in the interposing scenes, we see Dawn, she got off the bus. She's walking across town to the farm, and people are seeing her. They're not recognizing this person.
Right.
It's kind of funny. She's getting cat calls and all kinds of things from characters that are later going to be not so nice to her.
Okay. So John makes a reference to possibly having the wrong email, saying maybe it was an incorrect email, and perhaps that's why Donald isn't there.
Yeah.
And Tammy sees this as being proven right over Byron, and she says as much. And in the house, Byron is impressed with all the food that's been delivered.
Yeah, there's a whole table full of casseroles.
Yeah, basically a bunch of well-wishers, in support of John. Tammy asks if her dad has been in touch with Donald, and nope, but apparently their mother has. Tommy wants to question him further, but Byron interrupts to suggest a wash. And this is interesting language. I'm not sure if this is Canadian language, or if this is just a writery thing that Shelley Thompson did here. But yeah, they make reference to having a wash. And
yeah,
so
and
on
I
and so
noticed
forth.
that too, because 2 different characters said that line
Right.
in this film. I believe it was Byron and John Andrew both said it at different points in the film.
Right.
And yeah, I picked up on that too. I never heard that expression.
I mean, perhaps
Maybe it's a regional thing.
Yeah, perhaps, probably. Actually.
And it's interesting to note that Tammy put Byron in the guest room.
Yes.
Because she just can't share a room with him right now.
Now, at first, I get this. It seems like it's just like, out of respect to her dad. Like,
right.
She doesn't want to be intimate with Byron in, the house across the way from her dad. That makes perfect sense. But then there's something she says later that maybe makes it seem like there's more to it than that. But then we don't really explore it. And I'll have more to say about that in a little bit. So she tells Byron that Donald should be there. And Byron points out that should be isn't very helpful. Dawn arrives at the door and is greeted by Byron, who doesn't know who it is. And Tammy sees her and then reacts badly because
Tammy's
she looks like
shocked.
Yeah. And then John sees her and calls her Miranda, who happens to be his deceased wife. But nope, it's Dawn, his daughter, who used to be Donald. Then we have a super awkward kitchen scene. Their dog doesn't recognize Dawn. Dawn says that, oh, you must have forgotten me. And John is off staring into space.
Yeah, he's looking out the window. He's trying very hard to avoid this whole situation.
Tammy sits like she was just punched in the stomach. She does this slow moving to sit down thing. Dawn says it's good to see her dad, but he says nothing.
And then he leaves. He goes outside.
He just leaves without saying a single word.
Uh-huh.
I don't think that's a good sign. Now, on the one hand, you could beat up on this family for perhaps, like not being accepting of trans people. I would say there's a little more going on here than that.
Well, you have to remember, they haven't seen this family member for 5 years.
Yeah.
Even if Donald had walked in the door.
Right.
Without anything that they weren't expecting.
Right.
This would have been an awkward homecoming.
On top of the fact that their mother and wife just died.
Right.
So that's just something I wanted to point out there. We see John on a bench by a pond, I'm assuming. Or is this like the ocean?
I think that's the ocean.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
He's pondering his wife's death and the big change in one of his children. At least I think that's what he's thinking. It's not like we get into his head or anything like that. But we have awkward kitchen scene number 2. Tammy tells Dawn that she looks exactly like their mother. Tammy quietly asks questions about how long this has been going on for, where she went. And basically it started happening as soon as she left. And she's been basically nearby.
She was in Montreal, which we're not great at geography down here.
No.
But that was further away. But then throughout the course of the conversation, we learned that at some point in the last 2 years, she moved closer so that she could help with Mom's chemo.
Right.
So Dawn has been seeing Mom in secret.
Yes. And of course, Tammy doesn't react well to any of this. She thinks this is terrible, that this should be about their mom, but Dawn has made it about herself, like always. We've cut to John walking with one of the neighbors, played Jerry. I forgot to take down what he's played by.
Jerry is played by Hans Bagagild. I'm sorry if I said that wrong.
That's probably why I didn't take it down, because I had no hope of pronouncing it right. But yeah.
So these are John Andrews' cows. So their neighbor Jerry is stepping up to take care of the cows since John is, dealing with his wife's passing.
Right. And he ends up telling Jerry that Dawn is back. But Jerry is not getting what John is actually saying here.
Right. And he's just like, you'll see.
Yeah. Dawn goes to see Tammy in her room. And Tammy says that she isn't an ass. Dawn says that this is an adjustment and tries to explain that she's more comfortable this way. Tammy says that she never called. And Dawn says that she did, but she hung up, thinking that she was worried about losing her forever.
Yeah, and I think really the problem here is that Tammy's hurt that, why didn't you tell me? Did you just assume I wouldn't support you?
Yeah. I mean, like, basically, Dawn did not trust her sister at all and effectively ghosted her for 5 years.
Right.
So, in the process of trying not to lose her forever, she lost 5 years.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't really blame Tammy for her reactions here. I mean, yes, this whole thing is an adjustment, but there's this whole other level at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one thing I love about this film is that it's not just about, like, good people and bad people. Well, you could argue that Marty's a just straight bad person.
He's not a great person. But the family, you know, this is...
You can understand where they come from.
Right. This is,
human beings.
Again, this is a very just slice of life story that is representative of the types of stories that you'll hear from families who have, you know, gone through similar situations. Both the dealing with, you know, the bereavement of losing a family member.
Yes.
And dealing with, you know, falling outs between family members who haven't spoken in a long time. It's not just about the trans issue here.
Right.
It's just, it's a real, like, family story.
Absolutely. She notices that she's wearing her mom's jewelry that she thought was lost and was going to go to her daughter someday. And Dawn is like, it did go to her daughter. And Tammy does not react to that at all.
So specifically, these are the pearls that Dawn is wearing. And there's actually a short that Shelley also produced. And if I recall from Shelley's interview, she wrote the screenplay for the film first, then wrote Pearls, but Pearls came out first. So it was a short that had all of the same cast, except for the actress playing Dawn was a different person. And I haven't seen the short. I wasn't able to find it anywhere. But it's a short specifically about when Donald was first leaving. And Miranda was helping Donald leave so that they could go and transition without the pressures of the family. And
do we see Donald pre-transition?
I didn't see the film. I've only read about it. So I don't know exactly what the visuals looked like.
Right.
But this is when Miranda gave Dawn the pearls.
Gotcha.
And you know, it's in the book. Like, that scene is the prelogue to the book. So I actually haven't read the book because Amazon wouldn't sell me the book. That's a whole other story. We've been over that.
Right.
I still need to get my hands on the book, but I did read like the preview part of it. So it's like the prelogue in the first couple chapters, and that is where the book Roar starts, is with the pearls scene.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, it's nice here seeing it, experiencing all of this backwards, kind of. But seeing now this is the pearls we're talking about. And you know what? Tammy's upset. Dawn thinks Tammy's upset because Dawn says, I am her daughter. But honestly, like, Tammy's still the oldest daughter.
She expected to be the one to get this.
These should have been hers.
Right.
Like, all her life, she was expecting these pearls to be passed down to her.
Yeah.
And I understand why she's upset.
Yeah.
Because she is still the oldest daughter.
Okay, so the hits basically keep on coming as Dawn reveals that she saw her mom at Christmas, that Jenny kept her transition a secret, and that Dawn had moved back closer for schooling. Eavesdropping on this conversation is their dad. Dawn sits in the bed and makes a joke about Byron not being comfortable on this bed, but Tammy says they aren't going to sleep together here, and says she won't let anyone touch her ever again. Alright, so this really confused me. I thought this was perhaps setting up some kind of like abuse situation, that, but it's not supported by the rest of the film. It's never brought up again. So I actually reached out to Shelley Thompson to ask her this question, like, what is this all about? And, you know, maybe there was something cut from the script, something that was filmed and not shown, or that might be elaborated on in the book. And basically she told me that there was no abuse. That wasn't even a thought in her mind. It was basically a silly sibling rivalry thing here. And basically I'm overreading this.
That's what we tend to do.
Yes, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, we call it a deep dive,
right?
Yes, we dive a little too deep sometimes. Yeah, I was a little confused by that comment as well, though. I had kind of led to thinking it had something to do with the fact that the mom died of breast cancer, because later Tammy will express a fear that she's gonna, you know, inherit the breast cancer, and I feel like maybe she's just feeling uncomfortable with her body right now. I don't know. Yeah, it did feel a little displaced, that comment. Yeah.
Anyway, Dawn starts poking her, which leads to a slap fight and leads to Tammy crying in Dawn's arms. Tammy and her dad watch Byron and Dawn play soccer. Well, I mean, one of them is playing soccer. Byron is basically laying on the ground.
Yeah, he's not very good at it.
No,
but
no.
we learned already that Dawn is a pretty good soccer player, and she's actually even on a women's soccer team now.
I'm willing to bet that Byron is a better baseball player.
Probably. Probably.
Tammy brings up the fact that she still plays soccer and that she's going to go into sports physio. And she asks if he knew that. And he's like, how would I know that? And that's actually a good question. How would he know that?
Right.
I think she's just talking to make conversation and try to, make things less awkward here. And he says he doesn't get it. Tammy says it's hard, but she's glad she's here. She asks if her dad is, and her dad does not respond. That night, everyone deals with grief as they don't sleep. They're basically all...
It was really a
yeah.
beautiful scene. We get to see, the shots of everybody sleeping and...
Or not sleeping.
Right,
Most of them
in
are
their
wide
beds.
awake, yeah.
And we see Tammy's cuddling with the dog. And Dawn's cuddling with her pillow, and she's crying. And they're all just kind of dealing with the day, right? That didn't necessarily go how any of them hoped it would.
Dawn's alarm goes off, and she goes outside and greets her dad and sister. I said her mom. I don't know why that's in my notes.
Yeah, she didn't do that.
No, she definitely did not do that. This is not a ghost story. Who are about to go into town. Dawn asks to come, but her dad says they're fine. And Byron ends up tagging along and tries to get Dawn to go
And he's
along.
like, Dawn, aren't you coming? And she's like, nah, I'm going to stay here. It was really leading to oh, this isn't going to go good, is it?
No.
He's having a real hard time with this.
Yes.
So yeah, John, Andrew, Tammy, and Byron go into town. They're going to be dealing with funeral arrangements. Dawn is kind of, I think, thrown back by the fact that she's not being involved in anything.
Right.
She decides to unpack her suitcase. And she looks at a picture in the hall. It's a picture of the tractor. This is the first we're going to see of the tractors on a picture hanging in the hallway.
We cut to Jerry's wife, Sandra, who knocks on the door and is greeted by Dawn. She's bringing John some food and is confused by Dawn, saying she didn't think that Miranda had any nurses. Nieces. I did not mean to say nurses.
Yeah, because she recognizes the fact that Dawn looks just like Miranda, so they must be related. But she said, I didn't think she had any nieces, and Dawn's like, she didn't. I'm Dawn.
Right.
I feel Dawn is very aggressive in a lot of these scenes.
Yeah,
she expects people to know who she is, I think.
Right. I had that comment in my mind. It seems like sometimes she's a little hard on people.
Yeah.
The person that she's not that hard on is her dad. She's really hard on her sister, but her dad she gives a pass to.
She expects it, I think.
Yeah.
And I feel that's the whole reason she left and was gone for 5 years, is because she just had this fear of unacceptance from her father, which is
I think perhaps
sad.
she's overcompensating here.
Yeah.
I think she's her hostility is because she expects a bad reaction.
Right.
So she's it's pre-reacting to something that hasn't actually happened yet.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to
say.
And
Sandra is played by Bette McDonald.
So I mean, in Sandra's case here, she's right to expect that she's not going to react well to this.
Yeah. Sandra reacts very, very poorly. It takes her a second to figure out what Dawn is saying. And then she looks like she wants to scream in horror. She basically throws the food down and runs away.
Before saying, Jesus. And then Dawn says, nope, just her daughter. And I really appreciate that joke because that's absolutely a joke I would make. I'll hear somebody say Jesus and I'm like, I know you think highly of me, but I'm not quite Jesus. But anyway, all right. So yeah, Sandra hightails it out of there. Tammy and John meet the funeral director, who's played by the guy, and I didn't know this, I did not recognize him, played by the lawyer on Sullivan's Crossing.
Yeah, this actor is David Christoffel.
Mm-hmm.
And he is in Sullivan's Crossing. He plays Scott Meehan, which is Maggie's lawyer. And he's also in one episode of From. He plays a character named Eli.
That's right.
who's just pretty disgruntled about Colony House residents living in his basement.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure we spotted him when we did the rewatch on that one.
Yeah. So he plays Arthur Murray here, who is the funeral director.
So Dawn sits with Jenny, and who is Jenny exactly?
Okay, so I have this somewhere in my notes. At this point, we have no idea. Well, I can
Is
tell
it like
you,
an aunt or something?
I think that Jenny is their aunt.
Okay.
I think it's
So Miranda's sister.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, it's never explicitly said, but later we're going to meet Jenny's mother,
Right.
and they call her aunt.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that woman's Jenny's mother, actually, because they arrived together.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that if that woman is aunt, that's Miranda's aunt, and that would make Jenny the cousin.
Okay.
Or no. Wait. I don't know. They're related somehow.
Okay. All right.
I think she's Miranda's cousin, not Miranda's sister. That's
Okay.
what I think it is.
All right.
Because they're not calling her aunt. They're just calling her mother aunt.
Okay. So yeah, Dawn doesn't think that she can do this. Jenny disagrees, but Dawn says the best case scenario is the funeral and wake will be awful. That's the best case scenario. Leaving the funeral home, John asks if they really need to do a wake. And the funeral guy says to do what he wants, but the town loves a wake and loves Miranda. All right, I get the loves Miranda part of that, but the town loves a wake?
I mean, I think that he just means they're expecting a wake.
Oh, okay.
Like, this is a tradition.
So it's not like the town is just like, yay, we get to go to a wake.
The town's going to be upset if they don't have the opportunity to have a wake
Gotcha.
and show their respects to Miranda
Mm-hmm.
through the wake. Although I never really understood the whole having a separate wake and funeral personally.
Well, I mean, I haven't done this too often, thankfully. But usually, in the experiences I did have, there was the funeral and then immediately preceded by the wake.
Well, the burial, I think, is what you're referring to.
Right, yeah.
Now, if you're having a wake, as it's presented in this film, it's 2 different days. The wake is you just kind of go and chat and pay your respects to people and mingle.
Maybe I've never actually gone to a wake.
Then you have the formal funeral, like at a future date, which is the day of the burial.
Oh, okay. So maybe I just attended some kind of after party or something.
Okay.
A family get together, I should say, not after party.
Yeah.
All right.
Which I mean, that's how I'm familiar with it. Is you just kind of do it all in one day, right? You just do all of the things you're gonna do in one day. I've never actually been to a separate wake and funeral on 2 different days.
Yeah, no, neither.
That seems like too much to me.
Yeah. You kind of want to get it done and over with. You don't want to experience it multiple days, but this is Canada, so maybe the
I think it's got to do really
different.
with the fact that it's just a small town, a very close-knit farming community. Everybody knows everybody and knows everybody's business, and
gotcha.
I think it's really different than our lives.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, one thing that happened during this meeting with Arthur is that we found out Tammy wrote the obituary, and he has it, and she takes it to make an edit on it, and she changed the obituary to say instead of Miranda had a son and a daughter, she changed it to say her 2 daughters.
Yes, and it's funny because that's an early sign of acceptance from Tammy.
Yeah.
Her journey is not done. She still has a way to go towards like really getting this whole thing, but she's basically there.
She's trying.
Regardless of how she might act for the rest of the film, or like even before we get to a certain point of total acceptance, she's already trying. You can see that. So yeah, I meant to go back and look at that to see what the obituary actually read, but I missed that little part. But anyway, so we cut to Dawn going to the barn, and we are introduced to the tractor. We actually see it in person now, not just a picture.
Oh, and I want to back up a second. We were talking about Jenny before we let go of her. She's played by Francine Del Shepard.
Okay.
And we actually know her, too.
Do we now?
This is one I forgot to mention when you and I were talking off mic. She's actually in Sullivan's Crossing.
Okay.
She plays Mrs. Smith. And that's the camper, the mother of the the mother of the kidnapped girl.
Yeah, all right.
Yes, that's her.
Oh, cool.
So she's Jenny.
All right, so then we got another
lot of crossover between
Sullivan's Crossing reference.
Again.
Yep.
Why we're covering this.
Yeah. All right. So she sits on the tractor lovingly, As Betsy watches her,
That's the dog.
yes, she asks the dog if she thinks the tractor might work. And in response, the door is blown shut. And we kind of led to believe that perhaps this is Miranda's doing. Or that's at least how Dawn takes it. I believe we asked the question if Miranda is a character in this film. And I believe that she very much is. And this is an example of her being a character in the film. She's more so in the book than she is here, but she's still a presence. And this is I don't know, are we supposed to take away the fact that this might actually be the ghost of Miranda Boy?
I didn't pick up on any of that.
Okay.
So.
All right.
For once, you picked up on a detail that escaped me.
Okay. Yeah, usually it's the other way around. The family is eating Sandra's meal, which is artichoke casserole, which Tammy doesn't think fits with their dad's redneck persona. Dawn reveals that Sandra was the one that dropped it off, and Jerry ends up coming by and says hello to everybody, and he says the cows stopped chewing when the announcement of Miranda's wake came over on the radio.
Yeah, if that tells you anything about this town,
yeah,
they're announcing the wake on the radio.
Yes.
But yeah, it was a great little thing. He's like, the cows, like, they stopped chewing and they just sat in perfect silence and listened to the radio announcement about Miranda. And that was just beautiful. I think that it was like, yeah, even the cows are grieving for the loss of this woman.
And so he starts to talk to Byron and Tammy, and then he gets to Dawn and says he hasn't seen her since she was a kid.
Yeah, he handles this situation much more stoically than his wife did.
Yes, and says, different person now. Now, he says this line, you're a different person now. Is that a passive-aggressive swipe at her?
I don't think so.
No?
So I feel like the comment would have fit just talking to somebody that you haven't seen since they were a kid, and now they're grown
totally,
up.
Absolutely.
And I feel like he was trying very hard to make an appropriate comment. And Dawn smiled.
Yeah.
She didn't get upset by this. So
at the same time, her bearing and presence in the scene is kind of defensive.
Well, again, she does that with every person that she encounters in this film. Right. She's expecting the worst. And I feel like later we'll get the whole thing. Well, when Tammy mentions that she's a different person now, she gets really upset, right?
Right.
And she's like, no, that's not how it works. So, maybe she's not like perfectly happy about what was just said. You
could take that comment the wrong way, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be the wrong way. The comment could have been perfectly innocent.
Right, and that's what I think this is. I think this was him just being like, wow, you've grown up. Look at you.
Right.
Good job. You look like a grown up now. And he wasn't, I don't feel like he was trying to make a comment about her transition.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think she realized, that he's trying to say, hey, I'm not my wife.
Right. Well, I was kind of curious because his performance doesn't suggest that. It doesn't suggest any hostility whatsoever. It just suggests a kindly man. But at the same time, maybe there's he's masking that hostility, and this is like a leaking out moment, or it could just be what you were just saying.
Yeah, either way, he's doing better than her dad is.
Yeah,
who still hasn't hardly said a word.
Right. It's hinted here that John is having financial issues, and I forgot how exactly, but it's in my notes. Byron and Tammy talk, and she expresses disbelief that their mom didn't tell their dad about Dawn and how sick she was. Okay. Here's where I'm a little confused. Did Miranda and John not spend any time together during the last however long it took her to pass away?
Okay, I'm a little confused what you're saying.
Okay, so it seems like John didn't know she was sick.
I didn't get that at all.
No? Okay.
She went from chemo to dying very quickly.
Okay.
But I never got anything.
Maybe it's just Tammy that didn't really know, or
Tammy didn't realize how serious it was. She never came home.
Okay.
So I know she's mad at herself for missing her mom's death.
Right.
And she's mad at her dad for not telling her how serious it was.
Right.
But I don't think it was the fact that nobody knew it was serious. I think she just kind of missed it.
Okay.
And didn't come home, because she has her own life now.
Okay. Tammy says that the two of them need to share everything. And Byron says they do, except a bed. And then makes a sex joke that Tammy doesn't appreciate. It was basically about doing it on her parents' bed or something along those lines. And then, he apologizes for the joke. He sits next to her to comfort her. She says, imagine how Dawn must feel. She was the only family that she had at that point. And Tammy points out that was Dawn's choice. She didn't even give Tammy or her dad a chance.
Right.
And asks, why is this so easy for Byron? And that's a good question. And I think it's a very good answer here, is there was no history.
Right. And
he didn't know this person
He gave
beforehand.
this answer, and, I get it. That's the answer.
Right.
And he was like, well, she's just a new person for me. I didn't know Donald.
Right.
I just met Dawn.
Right.
And that's Dawn. That's all I know. And it's a really fair point to make.
Absolutely.
That dealing with this is going to be hardest on the people that are closest to the person.
Right.
And, I can say this from personal experience. I have a family member who is non-binary.
Yes.
And it's really hard for the family to remember that and to not use the wrong pronouns.
Right.
And to just put this into everyday conversation, because when you've known somebody literally their entire life.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you have to change your language regarding this person. It's not out of a lack of acceptance. It's out of my brain just isn't wired that way.
Right.
But it's really easy when we're talking about an actor that we've never met or a fictional TV character.
In my case.
Or an internet friend.
Right.
That we have.
Yes.
That's real easy to just be like, cool, we can do that.
In my case, I am actually in Byron's place, or was at least. There was a person that I worked with very briefly that was trans. Never would have known that if I didn't get told.
Right.
I didn't know them prior to their transition,
right.
But there were people that I worked with that did. So it was a harder transition for them than it was for me. I didn't know that previous person, or if that's how you would say it, I don't know.
You didn't know them by their other name and pronouns.
Yes, exactly. So it was an easier transition for me. It was no thing for me. But it might have been harder for the people who were there prior to that.
Right. And again, I don't mean harder as in harder to accept. It's just once you're used to something in your head, you have to physically remember every single time to change the words that come out of your mouth.
And, for a person like me who's not good with words to start with, that's a challenge.
So yeah, it's really something like what Brian says here. It's kind of the most obvious, but also maybe you don't see that thing from the whole story is that is why it's easy for him. Yeah. Of course it's easier for him because he didn't know Donald.
Right.
And everyone else is like, oh, wait, that's not Donald anymore. And they have to come to terms with that. I don't mean in a sense of they have to accept it. I mean, they have to just change their, like I was saying, just change the words that come out of your mouth, change your sentence structure. Right. It's you shouldn't have to think about what you're saying. It's like speaking a different language, right?
Yeah.
When you're learning a different language, you have to speak very slowly. It could take a whole minute to put a sentence together because you have to think about every single word.
Right.
And it's the same thing, when you're changing the language from something other than the way the words just come in your brain when you don't have to think about them. And it's one of those things, like she said, it's a adjustment. That's an adjustment too. It's just learning the new language.
Yes. And getting comfortable with it, so on and so forth. So Byron makes another joke. Okay. And this angers Tammy, and this time Tammy goes away. So I gotta say that I kind of relate to Byron, yes. In that in awkward or bad situations, my reaction to that is to make bad jokes.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are put off by that. That's not something that everybody deals with very well. it tends to make some people angry sometimes, but it is a tendency of mine to try to make a situation lighter by making jokes.
Yeah.
So I definitely relate to Byron in that respect.
Yeah, Byron's definitely a jokester.
Yes.
And I don't know if I actually said this since we started recording or not. I lose track, but he's the comic relief.
Yes.
In this film.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's great at it. Reid Price throws it out of the park.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's any Spice baseball reference. I didn't even mean it. Ha.
What do you know?
He just does such a great job of delivering these jokes, and it's like, otherwise it's kind of, there's a lot of heavy stuff going on, right? Like there's a lot of heavy plot here.
Right.
And he's always just like there with the funny. And I think it's great. I think they all hit, like, and the awkwardness of them hit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, where are we? Okay. John is talking to himself in the office, and Dawn interrupts to say she's going out.
She's going to bed, actually, I thought.
Oh, I thought she was going out. She said something about going out. You might be right. So she asks about milking the cows and in the morning, and if she can help. And he ends up just shooting her down. But
yeah, he doesn't want her help. And what he was talking about before she interrupted him is he was just kind of marveling at how Miranda handled everything. She handled the books and the billing, and she even paid for her own funeral expenses, which is something we learned at the funeral parlor. He went to take out his checkbook, and the director was like, well, no, Miranda paid for this 6 weeks ago. You're all set. So she handled all of the finances.
I mean, that's better than I would do. I would for sure not. I can't afford to die, basically.
And I don't know if it's really as much that he's having financial trouble as he doesn't even know their financial situation. He doesn't know how to balance the books. He doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, I'm sure the money's tight, but she made it work.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know how to do any of that.
Right.
He's sitting there like, this is foreign to me. I don't know who I owe money to. I don't know the process of how to handle the money. He just knows how to handle the cows.
Right. So the next morning, Dawn has decided that she's going to disregard her father saying no and gets up to basically milk the cows. Byron ends up tagging along.
Yeah, Tammy is like, why is everybody up? And this is a funny scene. And Dawn's like, it's a farm, remember?
Right, yes. People get up early.
And that's when Byron was like, why is everybody awake? What's going on? And Tammy's like, they're going to do farm things. And he goes, I want to do farm things.
Right.
Can I do farm things?
And, it's funny. I don't think Adam would do very well on a farm.
I don't think I'd do very well on a farm.
Neither would I. But yeah. I mean, he complained when I called him at 10:45 and said I was waking him up. But anyway, that's another story. And we have a montage of them performing chores, and it seems like a bonding moment for all of them.
Yeah, they're milking the cows, and Byron's playing his jokes through the entire little musical montage.
And John is getting kind of annoyed, and it's funny.
And the music, by the way, I love the soundtrack to this film. It's got really great music throughout the whole thing. I loved all of it. And that is another place where it reminds me of Sullivan's Crossing. It's a very similar soundtrack.
I felt that from the moment the movie started.
Yeah.
It's like, this feels very, the music specifically made me think Sullivan's Crossing. After they're done, John, Byron, and Dawn walk back. And her dad accidentally refers to her as a him when recounting a story, which John ends up apologizing for. He's starting to warm up to this a little bit. The family healing, however, hits a snag when Dawn brings up the tractor about fixing it. And John reacts badly to her, suggesting she can fix it. He says that she knows nothing about the tractor. And there is more to this than John just being a straight-up jackass. And we'll see more what's going on here later.
Mm-hmm.
But
you know that's how Dawn's taking it right now.
Yeah,
this all has to do with her.
Right.
When really it has nothing to do with her. The reason he's getting upset about the tractor.
Then we have an awkward family dinner. John and Dawn were bonding, but now they're not even talking.
Right, nobody's talking. And actually, this is breakfast.
Breakfast? Oh.
We just milked the cows. It's like 5 a.m.
Yes.
This is breakfast. This is going to be a long day.
Yes.
And one other thing I want to point out from that whole conversation is Byron was just completely bewildered that 4-H is a real thing. So 4-H plays a role through the rest of this movie.
Do you want to explain what that is?
4-H. It's where kids learn farm stuff.
Oh, okay. Well,
animals
that was way simpler than I thought.
I don't know the details, but it's
gotcha.
like farm kid stuff, right? It's farm school.
Okay.
And he's like, I thought it was just a movie thing.
Right.
So apparently Miranda was a 4-H leader.
Oh, okay.
And so this was a big part of their family.
Yeah, I meant to look it up, but I didn't understand what 4-H actually was.
Yeah, it's like, I was about to say what the 4-H's are, but I actually don't know.
Oh, okay.
Like, I want to say husbandry, like animal husbandry is one of them.
Okay.
I'm not a country person. I know very little.
Neither am I.
I definitely understand Byron's viewpoint on all of this.
Right. Yeah, I would be more in Byron's shoes than I would be in anybody else's, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, you definitely would be Byron. Like, he was, when he was milking the cows, he's, like, taking video of everything.
Yeah. All right, so basically, John leaves the table. Dawn ends up leaving the dishes behind. Tammy gets annoyed, saying, I guess I'm going to clean the dishes. And Byron tries to help, but says, don't pout, which is, of course, going to make Tammy angry.
Right, and then she ends up storming off, and Byron goes, the cows are easier.
Yes. I can definitely relate to that. Tammy goes to Dawn in the barn and wants to know why Dawn isn't talking to her. And she's like, well, I'm not talking to you. And she's, doing this in a really childish kind of way. And she ends up throwing some equipment. Hopefully that's not valuable stuff that, is breakable. Dawn says her dad is just counting the minutes till she leaves. And Tammy says to give him a chance, it's only day 3. She asks if Dawn is going to fix the tractor and says Mom wanted it fixed. Then starts bringing up the past and mistakenly refers to her as a him in the past, and this disgusts Dawn, not Tom. Tammy asks, are they just supposed to forget that she was some other person? Is there a rule book she should go by? And Dawn angrily says she wasn't someone else. Look it up. Well, I also did not know the answer to this question. I did not know how you would refer to a trans person's past. So I did what Dawn suggested here, and I Googled it.
Okay.
And if you'll pardon the indulgence, I'm going to read some of this. Because I think it's good stuff, and, whatever. You find it interesting, you do. If not, oh well. So this is from Amelia Gappin. And this is Amelia Teaches Trans 101, How to Refer to a Trans Person's Past.
Okay.
I don't know that I'm going to read all of this, but we'll see as I go. This is something that comes up from time to time, so I think it's an important thing to talk about. What's the best way to talk about a trans person's past? For example, if you're telling a story about someone, how should you refer to them? Should you use their chosen name and the pronouns they've asked you to use, or should you stick with what they went by at the time? For the most part, 99% of the time, you should never use a trans person's birth name, or as some of us often call it, dead name. And you should always stick with the pronouns they've asked you to use. There may be a situation in which the person said it's okay to do otherwise, but unless you've been specifically told to deviate from this, you should stick with what you refer to them as now. First, it's important to understand they didn't become who they are the moment they told you their chosen name. And they didn't become this person because they transitioned. Instead, they transitioned because they were already this person. When you're talking about their past, even though you may not have known them as the person they are now, this is the person they were. For example, I've always been Amelia. I may not have gone by this name in the past, but this is always the person I was inside, even if I was hiding it as much as possible and pretending to be someone else. The second thing is at play here is the fact that it's never okay to out a trans person. Depending on the company you're in, it's possible, perhaps even likely, that not everyone is aware that this person is transgender, and they would like to keep it that way. While I'm 100% openly transgender, it's still not okay for someone else to out me, even if it's pretty obvious to someone else that I'm trans. No one else has the right to confirm that information. Maybe I don't want to actually talk about the trans stuff at the time. Maybe my safety could be at risk, which is not something someone else is in a position to evaluate. Maybe there's just no reason why that person needs to know. And this goes on. And I think I'll stop it there. But yeah, I thought that was pretty good stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, moving along. Okay, so Dawn thinks this question is stupid. I don't think it is. I think it's a reasonable question to ask. Yeah, I mean, she doesn't understand these issues, so help her to understand.
Right.
Like, this is not a stranger. This is your sister.
Right.
But, again, at the same time, this feels real. it feels like a real sisterly dynamic or sibling dynamic. Tammy asks her if fixing the tractor was a dumb question, and Dawn says no. Tammy knocks on the bathroom door looking for her dad, but instead in there is Dawn. Tammy says she Googled it, just as I just did, and she says she knows who she is and always has, and says she's not very good at this. Dawn opens the door to reveal that Dawn cleans up rather nice here.
Yeah, they're getting ready for the wake.
Yes.
Is what they're doing. And the girls both look beautiful.
Mm-hmm. So we cut to the funeral home, which is Arthur Murray's funeral home. And Byron, when seeing this, starts tap dancing.
Yeah, he's very amused that the funeral director's name is Arthur Murray.
And for those of you who don't know who Arthur Murray is, he was an American ballroom dancer and a businessman whose name is most often associated with dance studio chain, a chain that bears his name. And he died in 1991. And he starts basically trying to find the footprints. Tammy is not so amused, as she typically is not.
I think they didn't understand the reference.
Yes. Basically, there's times where I'm kind of wondering why Tammy and Byron are even together.
Yeah.
She does not seem to appreciate his sense of humor at all.
Right? Because he comes from a very different world. You can tell Byron is not from the country.
Right.
I'm curious what their life together looks like back home.
Yeah, I'm curious about that myself. So John ends up escorting an elderly lady out of the car.
Yeah, and this is Aunt Lenny.
So this is actually Miranda's sister?
So they call this older woman Aunt Lenny. I could be wrong, but maybe we got to ask Shelley to explain this family tree to us. But I interpreted it after this scene is that Lenny is Miranda's aunt.
Okay.
Because she's too old to be like the first aunt, right?
Right.
So if she was Miranda's aunt, the family would call her Aunt Lenny.
Okay.
And it appears in this scene that she's Jenny's mother because she came with Jenny. Okay. And again, I could be totally making that up. But I think that Jenny is Lenny's daughter, which would make Jenny Miranda's first cousin.
Okay.
Because we know that, we don't know if Jenny has kids, but we know that Miranda doesn't have any nieces, so maybe she doesn't have siblings.
Maybe.
Anyways, Lenny is played by Mary Colin Krisham, and she actually stars in the short series Good Grief.
Ah, yes, which just showed up on YouTube.
Yeah, the first episode, anyways, they released on YouTube. I don't think they're going to release the whole series, but Good Grief is another
Bob Mann project.
Another series that's come up in many of our discussions. Bob Mann is in it. He talked about it in his interview that we recently had with him, so go check that interview out as well. And that whole production is done by Katarina B. I can't pronounce her last name. I don't have it in front of me. Katarina, who's in From.
Okay.
Yeah. What's her name? Eye Patch Girl.
Eye Patch Girl.
What the heck is her name? Anyways.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Moving along. So Aunt Lenny is escorted in. Jenny tells John that they plan to tell him about Dawn and her mother's illness. John says he was glad that she was there, but he doesn't really sound that convincing. So it doesn't really seem like this relationship is particularly healed. But Aunt Lenny refers to Dawn as a fella before they go into the funeral. And Tammy tells Dawn not to encourage Byron, who makes a joke, and Dawn to not attract attention to herself.
Yeah, Tammy's having a rough time.
Yeah.
Tammy's basically like, everybody's embarrassing me, and you all need to stop.
So on the steps with Dawn, we meet Banyu, which happens to be her mom's massage therapist. And as soon as she showed up on the screen and they're talking, it just screamed, "This is the love interest of the film" to me. But yeah, I mean, maybe that's just because I've watched too many movies. And yeah, but as soon as I saw her, I'm like, yep, they're going to hook up.
Okay, so we meet Banyu, and Banyu is played by Breton Lalama. And I recognize this actor, and I was like, where do I know them from? And I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure this actor is using they, them pronouns. As well as the character, which I don't know if you picked up on that. Most of the movie people are calling Banyu she.
Yeah.
But the character of the character of, oh my goodness.
I wouldn't think that Marty would be the one.
Not Marty.
Yeah.
Who is that other character? I don't have his name when we meet him. The one that she works with.
Oh, Ethan.
Ethan.
Yeah.
Ethan refers to Banu as they.
Oh.
Nobody else does.
That totally went over my head.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure Banu is trying to go by they, them, but the only person who cares is Ethan.
Gotcha.
But I think Banu's kind of cool, and, like, I don't care if you get it wrong. Like, whatever. It's not my problem.
Right. I mean, at some point, if nobody is going to, respect, your pronouns, if nobody's going to do it, then your options are to just be angry all the time or to just kind of blow it off.
Yeah, and in a way, like, I feel like that's kind of the polar opposite of where Dawn is at.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're kind of on opposite ends of their journeys here.
Right.
Where Banu's just like, okay, cool. Like, I'm not going to pay any attention to anything anybody says to me.
Right.
And Dawn's just, like, super aggressive, saying everybody's deserves my aggression because everybody's going to be horrible to me.
Right.
And I feel like they're a good balance for each other.
Right.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yes.
So I recognized Banu, and I was like, where do I know this person from? So I'm looking at their IMDb, and I figured out the only thing that I would have known them from. They were in Slasher.
Okay.
Season 4.
Yep.
Which season 4 was called Flesh and Blood. It was, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it was the season of Slasher where it's like this. Slasher is really cool, by the way. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's a Canadian production. Where each season, it's a seasonal anthology. So each season...
So kind of like American Horror Story.
Kind of like American Horror Story. Each season is its own separate thing. But there is some crossover cast between the seasons.
So also like American Horror Story.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like the Canadian Horror Story.
Gotcha.
And this season's Slasher, season 4 of Slasher, Flesh and Blood, was about like this family that lives on an island, and they play some game and they all end up dead. That was a very condensed description. But Breton Lalama was in that, and I was like, that must be what I recognize them from, because I didn't notice that. Nothing else on their IMDb page was familiar to me.
Yeah, I looked into her. I didn't see anything of note that I would have known.
And also in that season was, I don't have his name right in here. Oh my goodness, what's his name? The one who plays Randall on From.
Crap.
Names are hard, guys.
Yeah. Like I knew it when we were
too many names in our heads.
I knew it when we were doing From, but
yeah.
I can't recall it off the top of my head.
Simmons.
Yeah, Simmons. Yeah, last name Simmons.
Simmons. One of the Simmons.
Yes.
Multiple Simmons on that show.
Yep. I'm gonna look it up later, and it won't help me now, but yeah.
Anyways.
So
we meet Banu.
Yep. And they're talking about whether she can light up or not, and so on and so forth. They are soon joined by the rest of the family. John asks if Byron is going to join him for milking, and notably doesn't invite Dawn. I don't know if that actually means anything, but he invites Byron and not Dawn.
So, yeah, John Andrew is taking Lenny home, and then the rest, all the kids, they're going to go out to the bar.
Right. Byron makes another joke about, like milking cow tits or something along those lines. And Tammy says it's like she's in a sick reality show designed to show her exactly why she should not marry him.
That would be a fun sequel. We want to see what happens next with these people. Let's do the wedding story.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. And we should recommend that to Reid Price. Yeah.
Well, to Shelley Thompson.
Well, Shelley Thompson. Yes, yeah. So at night, Banu and Dawn bond, and as they and Byron and Tammy make their way to the bar, they basically talk about how they never went in here before because they were underage at the time.
Yeah, and Banu tells their story that they were just kind of passing through town, and then they met Ethan, who manages the cafe, and Ethan gave them a job, and that's why Banu stuck around. And as far as the massage therapy goes, Miranda was one of their 6 regular clients, and 3 of the other ones were Miranda's friends that she had brought into the practice.
Gotcha.
So Miranda was pretty important to Banu.
So at the bar, they run into a friend who happens to be the bartender, and she's pregnant. I don't have a note of her name.
Very, very pregnant Allie is the character's name. And I apologize, I don't have the actress's name in my notes.
Oh.
I missed that one.
Okay, so she knows Banu, and Dawn points out. Oh, and she also points out that her brother is there, Marty, played by Taylor Olson. Taylor Olson, who came up in our interview with Bob Mann.
Yeah, Bob Mann spoke very highly of Taylor Olson. Apparently, that's the person he's most worked with in Nova Scotia. And Taylor, and we had, at the time, I was like, I know that name, right?
Yes, yeah.
Well, here we go. We actually get to see Taylor Olson, and
73 acting credits for him, 22 writing credits, and 33 producer credits.
yeah, lots of stuff.
Yes, and he made a singular appearance in The Sinner, and I think we already brought up the Bone Cage, right?
Yep, he's in Bone Cage. He was in one episode of The Sinner.
He also directed that movie.
Okay.
The Bone Cage.
Okay. He is in King and Pawn,
Yes.
which is another short format series we've talked about a lot. That's not available to us in the U.S.
Of
But
course
that's got Reid Price and Bob Mann and Shelley Thompson. They're all in that one.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see that one. It looks fun. He's also got some appearances in the Trailer Park Boys. Yeah, Taylor's kind of everywhere in Nova Scotian talent.
She says that she should go say hi to Marty, but Dawn doesn't want to.
Yeah, Allie's kind of acting like they're best friends, right?
Right. And, yeah, basically, Allie just pushes it on her anyway, despite the fact that Dawn has made it very clear that she doesn't want to talk to Marty, and yells for Marty to come see her.
Come say hi to Dawn.
Yeah.
Like, this is totally, like, cool. You guys got to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll point out that Allie doesn't seem to make any sort of, like, notion at all that there's something to talk about with Dawn.
Yes.
Right? She doesn't acknowledge the transition. She's just kind of like, yeah, cool, Dawn. Like, yeah, I know you.
Right.
Which would be great until we bring Marty into the situation.
Right. I don't quite know where Allie is coming from because we don't really know her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would not have done this.
Yeah, it was
anyway.
a pretty bad situation. We learned during this conversation also that Marty is helping run their dad's machine shop.
Mm-hmm. Marty looks amused when he looks over and goes over to talk to Dawn.
And he brings his friend Jimbo. I didn't catch that actor's name either. I think I was getting tired at this point. There's a lot of notes.
Yes. And he keeps referring to her as Donald, and she keeps saying Dawn, and he keeps saying, yeah, that's just what I just said. He's acting like a garden variety jackass here.
Very clearly trying to antagonize her. He's doing everything he can to make her uncomfortable and upset.
Mm-hmm. And, like you said, he seems like a garden variety jackass, but as the movie goes along, he turns into straight up arsonist and possible murderer. But anyway, things escalate to the point where Tammy verbally ends up defending her. And, at this point, his sister is in there to, saying, hey, look, I'm sorry about this. But after he ends up getting physically into it with Byron.
Yeah, so it's a really, tense scene.
Yeah,
It escalates very quickly. So first, Banu sticks up for Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first person that speaks up. And then Byron just goes and literally dumps a whole pitcher of beer on Marty.
Yeah. You know what the scene needed?
A baseball bat?
Exactly. And only a couple people will actually even get that reference.
Reid Price will get it.
Yep.
And I bet he will listen to this. So
you might.
Hey, Reid.
How you doing, Reid Price?
Okay, so he dumps the pitcher of beer on Marty. Allie apologizes, right, for her brother's
brother's behaving, but then she ends up switching sides.
Well, Tammy.
Yeah.
So Tammy goes, "It's fine."
Yeah.
Which that comes up later. So everybody's just kind of reacting in a really fast and really horrible manner.
Right.
Right? Like I said, things escalate very quickly, and Marty and Byron end up throwing punches.
Yeah.
Things get very physical very quickly. And that's when Allie flips and she says, Tammy, get your brother out of here.
Yeah. And it basically blaming her for the situation where just a few minutes ago she was apologizing for her own brother's behavior.
Right.
Which her characterization here is pretty schizophrenic. But yeah. I'm not sure what to make of Allie, and we never see her again, so it's not like...
Well, we see her. She's in a couple scenes, but I don't think we interact with her again.
Gotcha, okay.
She's at the tractor...
Oh, okay.
...thing. I don't even know what to call it.
I think it was a tractor pole or something along those lines.
Yeah, that.
Okay, so yeah, basically they all end up getting kicked out.
Yeah, and it's at the very end of this that Tammy finally speaks up for Dawn and
Yep.
says it's her, not him, and everyone's yelling and fighting and screaming, and they go home.
Yeah, that was a fun time.
Fun time, great time at the bar.
Yeah, Dawn returns home. John got a call about the incident and says to make her choices, live how she wants, but if she's going to be here, she has to play the game. And she vehemently disagrees with this. She says, "This, I don't need to play this game. This game is cruel, and this is not a choice. If you think this is a choice, you are very much mistaken."
Yeah, and I'm curious what version of events he got on that phone call.
I'm sure it was not any version of reality.
He definitely did not hear what really happened.
Right. Yeah, so you probably heard, oh yeah, Dawn started a fight, blah, blah, who knows.
And
Okay.
then we cut to the morning.
Yep, next morning, chores with Jerry. Jerry's there this time. There's a reference to running out of feed. Dawn goes to the tractor, and John ends up following suit. Asks her to come along to the machine shop.
Yeah, he starts by saying, like, oh, I need to go to town. You want to come with me? And she's like, where are we going? He says, to the machine shop.
Now, she takes this the wrong way.
Right.
She thinks this is to apologize to Marty.
Right, because remember who runs the machine shop?
Right.
Marty and his dad do.
But that is not John's intentions at all. She thinks, she says the incident was Marty's doing. And, John says, well, that figures. I always told you that you need to defend
apparently,
yourself.
Marty has been bullying Dawn since the age of 8.
Which, if that's the case, then Allie really should have known better than to think that...
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, that Dawn would want anything to do with him. But, yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
And so he reveals the real reason to go to the machine shop is to get parts for the tractor.
Yeah, before that, though, he almost slips up and, says something like, I said you need to stick up for yourself, be a man.
He's having a hard time with
but he's clearly trying.
His words. Yeah.
He says, and he's almost slips up once, he stops himself. He almost does it again and stops himself, and finally just says Marty is a coward and that she isn't.
Yeah. But, it's funny because all of the statements he's saying are things that might be perfectly normal to even say to your daughter.
Right.
But the fact that they have male undertones is what makes them tricky here.
Yeah.
So he's just talking, right? He's using normal language. I don't feel like he would use any different language if he was talking to Tammy.
Well, I don't think you said you need to be a man to your daughter. I don't think that's necessarily what you would say, but
I think he would.
You need to be a man?
Yeah. Man up, I think, is like what he said.
Okay.
Like
put on your big boy pants.
Don't be I don't feel like these are I don't feel like he was using gender in these words to use gender. I feel like this is just language for stand up for yourself.
I got you. Makes sense. I love this scene, by the way. It's great. So the real reason that he wants her to go along is to get parts to fix the tractor. And she smiles because she's realizing that he is starting to accept her. John is in his office and is told by Dawn that she is ready to go. But he gets a phone call. And this is further hints at his financial problems.
Yeah, he gets a call from Nancy, who we don't meet Nancy, but it sounds like he owes Nancy money. And he's like, yeah, I know what we owe. Miranda handled all that, but we really need some feed.
Right.
So Nancy puts in the order for feed for him. It sounds like kind of against better judgment, probably.
Right.
That they, needed to settle their bill before they got any more feed. But what are they going to do? Let the cows starve?
Right. Dawn runs into Tammy, and Tammy starts apologizing and wonders if she could, basically for what happened at the bar, where she said it's okay. Wonders, and she said, she knows it wasn't okay. Wonders if she could maybe start apologizing on credit, apologize 12 times now until she leaves. And Dawn is like, well, how soon are you leaving? Like, is that going to be enough?
Yeah, and this was a cute moment between them. It felt like a good sibling moment. And
Tammy asks if she wants her to go. Dawn suggests, and you're hearing a lot of loud noise now, I'm sure, because that's Adam walking up and down the stairs or walking on the floor. Dawn suggests that they should both stay until Dad says he loves them. And Tammy's reaction suggests that might be a while. And then they suggest that they stay till she fixes the tractor, at least.
Fixes the tractor and runs it at the Highland Heart Tractor Trials, which is in 2 weeks.
Yes. And that's what you were looking for, by the way.
Yes. The tractor trials.
Yep.
Not something I'm very familiar with.
Nope.
I was actually very confused by the tractor trials. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
But Tammy's like, I can't miss 2 more weeks of work. Like, she has no intention of staying that long. She was just coming home for a funeral, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she says, she doesn't say out loud, but she's like, I better get Dad to say he loves me because I need to leave, right? So she tries to get Dad to say that she loves him, and of course that doesn't work.
Yep. He's just like, okay then, see you later. They go to see Banu, and this is where we get introduced to Ethan, the one who wants.
Yeah. Well, they go to the machine shop, and so John Andrew goes in there, but instead of following him, Don goes next door because the cafe's in the same building as the machine shop. And
then she ends up going to the machine shop. Marty's father is shocked by the similarity to Miranda.
Okay, you jump. You skipped the whole cafe scene.
Okay.
So I'll go into that in a little detail.
Because I decided to skimp on that, I guess.
Yeah, so we met Ethan, which we mentioned Ethan already. Ethan is played by Monty Murray. And Monty is actually in 4 episodes of The Sinner Season 4.
I knew I recognized him.
And I don't know who he played in that, because I feel like we need to review that series again.
Yeah.
So, The Sinner Season 4...
We even do a podcast on it since we bring it up so much.
The Sinner Season 4 has all of these Nova Scotian actors that we keep talking about. Reid Price is in it, and, oh my goodness, what's his name?
Zach Bay.
Well, Zach's in it too. We haven't gotten to him yet.
Oh yeah.
But another actor from
Bob Mann?
No. Victor.
Scott.
Yeah, Scott McCord. Scott McCord is in The Sinner. Okay, so The Sinner Season 4 is filmed in Nova Scotia, obviously. It's got all of these names that we keep coming up with. And it's funny because I had watched that prior to watching any of this, right? And I had told you about it. And we actually... I told you about it because when we were covering Quantum Leap, and Alice Kremmelberg came up in Quantum Leap.
Yep.
And so you watched it because of that.
Yep.
And then it's like, oh, and now all these other people are in it. And I'm like, I don't remember who these people were in it. So I feel like I need to watch it again. Yeah, because now we're going to recognize everybody. Yeah,
it seems like the world revolves around the Sinner because almost every single person has that credit on their internet.
So I think we need to watch The Sinner Season 4 again. Mm-hmm. And, that's another series that's kind of... seasonally anthology. It's a seasonal anthology.
Yeah.
I was trying to change that verb, but
there's one character that reoccurs. I mean, there's more than that, but
but like the overall
story,
the overall arc and location is different. So that's why I always refer to it as specifically The Sinner Season 4 because it was its own kind of isolated thing. Anyways, he was in 4 episodes of that. And they have this, this little chat in the cafe. And this is where we first hear Banu referred to as they. And again, not Marty. Why do I keep saying Marty? Ethan will continue to do that. It'd be the only character that is never acknowledged in any way other than Ethan calling them they.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So Dawn remembers Ethan from 4-H. And is like, oh yeah, you used to sing. And he's like, yeah, I loved your mother. Remember, she was the 4-H leader. Everybody loved her. And the fact that he's a singer, that comes up later because he actually sings at Miranda's funeral.
Okay. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after they give her coffee on the house, and Banu and Dawn exchange numbers during this scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The love connection builds.
Then she finally goes next door to join her dad in the machine shop. She got that little courage she needed, right? Before facing Marty, she went in to see a friendly face, and she got 2 of them.
So Marty's dad ends up calling him up, and we see a little cut on his lip. And John takes some verbal swipes at him about it, saying, oh, I see you met Byron. And John takes the parts from Dawn.
Oh.
What?
I am so sorry. I made a huge mistake.
What did you do?
In my notes, Monty Murray, who I said in 4 episodes of The Sinner, that's not Ethan. That's Marty's dad, Angus.
Oh, okay.
I totally confused my notes.
Confused?
Confused, yeah. So Monty Murray is the actor who plays Marty's dad, Angus, and he's the one that's in 4 episodes of The Sinner Season 4.
Okay.
Ethan, I don't appear to have notes for.
Okay.
So that's why. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay. Well, hopefully we won't get canceled for that. Anyway, so yeah, where am I? Okay. Yeah, so John ends up taking the parts from Dawn, and I was kind of curious if this was like a little bit of sexism on his part, not letting Dawn carry the parts.
See, I took it as, hey, I'm trying to support you as a woman.
Okay.
Because it'd be the polite thing to carry this for
So
the
this
woman.
is a gentlemanly thing, not necessarily an example of sexism. Like, you can't carry these parts.
Right. Because I feel like in his head, like, making you carry the parts is what I would do for my son, not my daughter.
Okay, and how do you think Dawn takes that?
I feel like she would understand that, and she'd appreciate it.
Okay. Says that so John ends up saying that they need to make one more stop. And they cut to Tammy and John with Miranda's ashes. Not Tammy.
It was Dawn and John Andrew.
In the car. And they bring them to the house, and the family is very sad.
It was this very emotional, tear-filled scene. No dialogue, but we see them upset. We see Byron like trying to make jokes, and it's like, oh, this is a serious moment. Can't make a joke now. And then Tammy's like, what do you got there? And then she realizes.
So, even there are certain circumstances in which I would not try to make jokes. This is definitely one of them. Yeah. So, Tammy and Dawn are putting ashes in something.
Yeah, they're transferring the ashes to it's like a pottery jar. It looks like something one of them made in a crafts class when they were 5.
Mm-hmm.
It says mummy on it.
Aww.
So this is where they've decided to store Miranda's ashes. But they are horrified to realize that only about half of the ashes fit into this container.
And Dawn comes up with a solution, which is to go outside and sprinkle the ashes by a tree. And Tammy accidentally gets some in her nose, and Dawn says that Miranda planned that. And this is a very interesting joke. It's something that I appreciating dark humor, but this was kind of interesting.
Yeah, the whole thing's a little cringy to me.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do any of that.
Yeah. So we cut to the funeral, and Jenny.
Before we get to the funeral, actually, Tammy spends the night in the guest room with Byron.
Oh yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah, she goes into his room that night.
So for whatever reason, she's gone on this little journey, and she's decided she's okay with sleeping with Byron in this house now. Yeah. And I didn't understand the connective tissue there, but yeah, maybe we can have like another story or something explaining all that.
So then we get to the funeral.
Mm-hmm. And Jenny is speaking lovingly about Miranda, and we see a shot of Zach Bay in the crowd, and he's playing a policeman.
Yeah, and we'll meet him a little later.
He, of course, plays Reggie from season 2.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And is also a similar character in The Sinner.
Well, I guess just since you're talking about him, let me get all the notes I have about him.
Okay.
His character in this show is called Fuzzy.
Fuzzy, yes.
And yeah, we saw Fuzzy in the scene, but we will meet him a little later in the movie. Zach Faye, again, like you said, he plays Reggie in From, and he plays a cop in The Sinner. Okay, I guess that's all I had in my notes.
So basically just everything.
It is everything you said, but
except
I checked it off now.
Yeah, okay. So Tammy ends up speaking, and as she starts to speak, she breaks down.
Yeah, so she's talking about her mom being a 4-H leader, and how they always had to be jealous of all of these people in the crowd because their mom gave them so much time, that took away from the kids. And she begins reciting the 4-H pledge. I had to look up what this was she was reading, and that's the 4-H pledge, which was very important to Miranda. And she gets all choked up, so Dawn ends up joining her on stage to help finish reciting the pledge.
That night, the sisters join John on the couch and cuddle up with him. And it's interesting to me that Tammy's way more comfortable being physical with her dad, like cuddling up and putting her head on his shoulder, than Dawn is. Well, like, she's a little bit more reserved.
They wouldn't have the history of doing that.
Right.
Yeah. Because Dawn didn't grow up being his daughter.
Right.
And that's not something that he would have done with Donald. But that's something he's probably done with Tammy since she was 2 years old.
Right. Yeah. So Dawn and John work on the tractor. She goes back to the house where Byron and Tammy are talking about the plan as far as how long they're planning on staying. And he leaves, apparently to have coffee with Banu.
Yeah, and Tammy wants to know if that's weird.
Right, yeah. We see them fixing the tractor in a montage.
Yeah, musical montage of all these tractor repairs. Tammy even helps out, which is a surprise because she hasn't helped with anything yet.
Right. Dawn goes to the coffee shop, and Ethan asks how long she's planning on staying. And he's clearly fishing for the details here for someone else. Banu stops in and invites them to a picnic and says that it'll happen at some other time, like later in the day or something.
Later in the day. And they're going to a picnic on the beach, and they're all going. Tammy and Byron are going. It's like, okay, cool. Mm-hmm. Seems like kind of almost like they invited Dawn as a afterthought. Like you already had these plans with Dawn's sister, and you're just now inviting Dawn.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's to make it look like Dawn is an afterthought when she's not actually the afterthought.
Yeah, maybe that's what the whole coffee with Byron was about, was just setting all this up.
Oh, okay. So John explains his history with what I'm assuming it's his dad, right? Is it his dad or Miranda's dad?
This is Miranda's dad
okay.
We're talking about. So the tractor belonged to Miranda's dad, and Miranda actually learned to drive on the tractor. And so this is the whole story of why the tractor is such a sensitive topic for John Andrew. And basically he's talking about how his father-in-law did not approve of him. So when him and Miranda got married, he always felt like his father-in-law didn't approve of him. And it was to his discomfort because this was Miranda's family's farm that he moved into. So John Andrew moved in here, and he never felt like it was his own place. It was his father-in-law's place, right? Mm. And then he wanted to replace the tractor, this tractor, with something, newer and bigger, like they needed it for the farm. And he said it led to the biggest fight that him and Miranda ever had, because she didn't want to retire that tractor. It was sentimental to her. And after her dad died is when she asked John Andrew if he could fix the tractor, but he couldn't fix it. He said he couldn't. And I don't know if that means like he physically couldn't figure out how to fix it, or he couldn't bring himself to fix it, or
I think
he couldn't afford to fix it.
I think he sort of implies that the reason he couldn't fix it is because he felt belittled by his dad, or her dad rather, and he kind of associated the tractor with the dad, making him feel that
couldn't
bad.
Bring himself to do it.
And he says that he basically realizes that he's done effectively the same thing to Dawn, without really meaning to.
Yeah, and he says the only things his wife ever asked of him was to fix the tractor and to fix his relationship with Dawn.
And the tractor is kind of a symbol of a promise he didn't get to keep to his wife.
Right.
Which is why he reacted the way he did to Dawn earlier when they were talking about the tractor. John says he might not get it, but he doesn't wish ill will on anyone. And she says lots of people don't get it. They try to get the tractor started. The first time is a failure, and she ends up swearing. And John says, that isn't very ladylike, which I found amusing. The second attempt works, though. And so officially the tractor is working.
Tractor's running after that lovely musical montage.
Yes. And we cut to the picnic. Byron and Banu bond, which continues to annoy Tammy. Marty happens upon the scene.
Yeah, Marty and his friends and his cousin that we met earlier, I think it was. And they say that the cousin owns this beach, so they have to leave.
Right. And this is more, another instance of conflict between this group of people. Marty ends up shooing them away, and they just walk away after almost getting into a fight, but they decide not to go.
Yeah, so second time now, they're getting displaced from their plans.
Mm-hmm. In the car, Tammy takes a swipe at Banu, and this causes Byron to stop the car and to get out and to fight with her.
Yeah, he calls Tammy out, and she ends up coming back and saying she's losing everything. She says, I lost my mother, I lost my brother, and now I'm losing you.
Right. And she says it's not the case, that basically the reason she was talking to Banu in the first place is because she wanted to know if Dawn was staying or not. And of course, they're in the car overhearing this.
Yeah.
And when they end up saying they love each other, they kiss and make up, literally. And in the car ride home, Dawn has a very pleased smile on her face because she's happy about what she just overheard.
Yeah, and Dawn and Banu hold hands in the car.
Aw. So after dropping off Banu, Tammy ends up apologizing to her.
Yes.
Before going to bed, the girls say they love John, and once again, John doesn't say it back. And this is a reoccurring joke. Dawn is a special guest for a 4-H class.
Yeah, and Byron is teasing the girls all about 4-H.
Mm-hmm.
Now that he knows it's real, he thinks it's pretty dorky.
And she's demonstrating how to fix a mower. And there's a girl that's like, wait, a girl fixing a mower? And she's like, yep. And she, after the class, she ends up talking to a kid played by Oliver Boyle, who, of course, we knew from Sullivan's Crossing.
Yeah, the Oliver Boyle, and he played Remy Smith in Sullivan's Crossing.
He's also in the Taylor Olson film Bone Cage as well.
Yes. And his character in Sullivan's Crossing is the little brother of the missing camper. So the actress who played Jenny in this is actually the one who plays his mother in Sullivan's Crossing. And yeah, they have a beautiful little scene. It's just this one little scene, and his character in this movie is named Kyle. And he approaches Dawn, and it's just really a cute interaction. And he's like, my mom told me it's okay for me to wear a pink shirt.
Right. Now, that's the thing with kids, is like, there's no hate in any questions that are coming from a kid. You have to teach a kid to hate in order for them to hate. There's no hate involved here whatsoever. He's just trying to understand.
He's curious.
Yeah.
Which is, what kids do. They ask a lot of questions.
Yes, they do.
And, she's like, yeah, your mom's a pretty smart lady, because that's true. And he spits out that all these things. He says, she told me it's okay for me to wear a pink shirt. And she told him that Dawn is the one that's fixing the tractor for Highland Heart. I guess that's big news in the community that this tractor is getting fixed.
Right.
And that she used to be a boy. And Dawn says all of that is sort of right.
Yes.
And now she is just herself.
Mm-hmm.
So she takes a much more simplified approach to all of this, explaining it to a child.
Because you have to.
Instead of being like, well, no, I didn't used to be a boy. This was always me.
Yeah. I'm glad she... I don't know. I kind of maybe take this as... Her attitude here is significantly less hostile than she's been to everybody else.
Right.
Is that just because this is a kid she's talking to? Or is that because she's growing as a character?
Possibly. And possibly this coming out of the mouth of a child is making her realize the innocence behind these type of questions. Mm-hmm. Right? And if they come so naturally to this child who has no filter, maybe she's starting to understand, like, oh, these are the questions that everybody has, and I just need to help them through this discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
Or perhaps we're just writing way too much into every scene again.
Yeah, well, they don't call it the deep dive for nothing. So they have a late night campfire, and this is Byron, Tammy, John, and Dawn.
Yeah, they're celebrating that the tractor, is finally finished.
Byron asks about the trials while holding his phone, and Tammy ends up taking his phone, and there's a little moment where Byron pushes his imaginary buttons on his imaginary phone, which I thought was kind of cute. I don't know if you noticed that. I
didn't notice that. I was too busy trying to listen to the explanation of what the tractor trials are.
Right.
And it didn't help me.
No?
This whole explanation that they're giving to Byron, because I was still really confused about what these trials were. And there, my second time watching the film, when I was taking these notes, I'm like really listening to this description, and she's like, oh yeah, it's like figure skating for tractors. And I mean, I don't get it. I still don't get it.
Yeah. Tammy asks if she can drive the tractor, and John, bemused, says no, and then she refers to Dawn as the favorite.
Yeah, and then they admire the stars.
Unfortunately, the next morning, they wake up to the barn on fire. They end up getting the tractor out, and the fire is eventually end up put out, but the tractor is definitely damaged.
Yeah, so they all, rush out, and I thought it was still during the night, but I guess it was maybe morning, because they get up at 3 a.m. to milk the cows, right?
Yeah.
It was really early. And actually, John Andrew went inside and managed to get the tractor out. And I'm just like, that's really dangerous. Like, why are they letting him go in there?
You know, that kind of reminded me of a more extreme example of what happened in This Is Us with Jack. And I definitely disagreed with Jack doing that. Like, basically, get some family heirlooms.
Right.
Because that ends up resulting in his death.
Yeah, like, I get that you're trying to save the tractor, but, like, you're risking your life to do so.
Right.
And in this case, like, the building is literally on fire.
Yeah.
You're running into the active fire. Like, that's scary. And Dawn wanted to follow him, and Tammy pulls her back and is like, let Dad do it. Like, no, how about you try stopping him to wait for the firemen to get here?
Yeah, all things considered, I think that if you were to choose a tractor or your dad, you would hopefully choose your dad.
I would hope.
Yes, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really sad, you know, if the whole thing burned down, but you don't let your dad go into a burning building.
I mean, it's not like you're saving a person, you're saving a tractor.
Now, at first, when they said the barn's on fire, I thought it was the cow barn, and I got really upset for a minute, thinking all the cows were on fire, and then I realized it was the tractor barn. Okay. So yeah, he managed to get it out. The damage looks pretty severe. At this point, the neighbors have gathered, the firefighters arrive, and they put out the fire. I half expected to see Connie and Rafe here, putting out the fire. Those are the characters from Sullivan's Crossing that, you know, handle every emergency department on that show.
Yep, apparently they have different personnel here. Maybe some of these people can go over there.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next morning they find evidence that it was Marty that set the fire.
Yeah, Tammy specifically finds Marty's necklace in the wreckage of the barn.
So they go to the police station, and Tammy and Dawn end up noping out of there.
Yeah, but John Andrew goes in to talk to Fuzzy, and this is where we first get some lines from him.
From Zach Bay, so he can be credited.
Yeah.
They end up talking about some periods. Is it periods they're talking about here?
They're talking about breast cancer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't get that conversation right at all.
Okay, well, I'll cover that then. They're having a little heart-to-heart in the car, and Tammy said she's scared of getting breast cancer, like her mother had. It's just referred to as it, so I can see where you get confused.
Okay.
Mom died of breast cancer.
Right, yeah.
And she's scared of getting it. And asks Dawn if she can get it, and then asks, are your breasts even real? And Dawn's like, yeah, they're real. And Tammy's relieved to learn that Dawn can get breast cancer too, and they both have to be afraid of this.
Yeah, that
was the conversation.
Lovely sentiment.
But yeah, I have news for them, and that's the fact that anybody can get breast cancer, not just women. Like, it's much rarer, of course, but men can get breast cancer too. You don't need to have growth hormones to give you breasts to get breast cancer. That's
great. Okay, now it's not so much, but yeah, anyway.
But yeah, that's what's happening there, is Tammy is expressing her fear of this, which is a very valid thing for her to feel, because her mother just died from it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what this conversation was about, because they were talking in code, and yeah,
it wasn't really.
Anyway, you were the better person to summarize that scene than myself anyway. But anyway, Dawn goes to the nope. That's further down my notes.
So Fuzzy arrests Marty.
Yes,
Marty's arrested. We're all watching this from the cafe.
And Ethan's like, we'll see how long that sticks for, if at all. Apparently, thanks to the fire, John's financial problems are over because the insurance.
He's talking to a character named James about the insurance, and apparently he's getting a pretty good payout from that barn burning down. So all of his financial troubles are fixed, including the fact that he now can afford to fix the tractor again.
Gotcha. Dawn says the tractor is done, but thanks to the money, it may not be, and John is not letting Dawn in on this, but Byron is a kind of a co-conspirator.
Yeah, John, Andrew, and Byron scheme to fix the tractor, but they're running out of time.
Right.
Time is their problem now, not money.
Dawn is basically prepared to leave, but Tammy...
she packs her bags.
But Tammy says not to because he hasn't said it yet. And that's, of course, that he hasn't said that he loves them yet.
Right.
John on the phone gets the good news, and they all go out for pizza. And apparently this is that the town is going to help them with this project.
Yeah, he said, like, oh, they're going to do something. So everybody knows what's going on except for Dawn.
Right.
Who's...
They're basically surprising her.
Yeah.
Dawn goes to the bathroom where she encounters Marty, who's extra creepy and admits to doing the fire and says the next time if she stays, it'll be the entire house. Tammy intervenes.
And he goes as far as sexually assaulting her.
Yes, basically.
Yeah.
Tammy intervenes and Dawn cries in the bathroom and tells her not to tell Dad. Probably because John at this point would have gone and murdered him.
Yeah.
They run into town. Well, no, okay. The next morning, Tammy says something's a good idea to not give Marty the power.
Tammy basically pleads with Dawn that she should go to the police over
Okay.
Marty assaulting her.
Yep. And, okay.
And she doesn't want to do that.
Right. I don't get my note here, but whatever. They run into town, John and Dawn. He needs clean plugs, and he says that they aren't done yet with the tractor.
Yeah.
And the town is pitching in to repair the tractor.
Yeah, so it's raining. They can't fix the tractor in the rain. They don't have a barn to put in anymore. So they put up this, like, makeshift tent thing to fix the tractor in. And you see the whole community kind of banding together. The 4-H kids are there. I'm not sure what they're doing, but they're there. We see all these neighbors. They bring supplies. Jerry brings another artichoke casserole.
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of preparing to have a long night fixing the tractor. And even the people who aren't going to fix, they come to hang out, and they're like, we're going to have a camp out.
At night, Fuzzy ends up checking on the family to make sure that they are okay.
Yeah, he's like patrolling. They're really like everybody's banding together, right? They're not going to let Marty ruin this for them again.
As the family laughs together. In the morning, Tammy wakes up Dawn, who is cuddling with Banu, sleeping with Banu, basically. And she says that she can't find Dad. And Dawn knows where she is. Basically, she had actually observed John down by the ocean earlier.
Down by the water, whatever the water is.
Yep. And so that's why she knows that he's there. We saw that earlier in the film. I didn't make note of it. So they end up buying him, and they sit with him, and he ends up telling them that he loves them. And Tammy reacts by saying, oh no, does this mean I have to leave? And I found that cute.
Yeah, and he also tells them that the tractor is done, which they seem super shocked about. You didn't see them working on it all night?
Right. Yeah. So we are at the tractor trials, which they are using pride colors at. And Dawn, who's riding it, ends up spotting Marty. She stands up in defiance, staring at him, and he's looking back at her, and I don't know, with this weird expression.
Yeah, he almost like ruined it for her, right? She wasn't going to be able to do what she needed to do. But Marty's father like hit him and made him leave. Right.
Is that his father taking her side?
I think so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Marty leaves, and then she's like, okay, cool. And then she does her tractor thing.
So I'm kind of confused because the way this ends, it seems like Marty would still be a threat.
Sure. Yeah.
So, So how is he neutralized? Is it because his father turns on him?
Well, I mean, this isn't the first time his father kind of smacked him and told him to play nice.
Right.
Like, we saw something similar happen in one of the machine shop scenes.
Right.
Where I feel like everybody's trying to some degree, except Marty.
Right.
And Marty has a huge problem. Anyways, we might as well just get to the very end of the movie here,
Okay,
because we're right at the end.
Right.
They do the whole tractor thing, and it's really weird. I was expecting an outdoor event.
Right.
I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting this. This scene was very confusing to me.
Right.
To the point where I didn't even know what to write in my notes. I just said, Dawn presents the tractor at the trials. And then we see the family accompany the tractor home.
Yep.
And then there's end credits.
Right. And I was like, wait, that's where the movie ends? Come on. Like, we don't know if Tammy and Byron are going to stick around, what they're going to do with the rest of their lives.
So here's what I wrote in my notes. I said, the end felt a little rushed. I want to know what happened next.
Right.
Does Marty ever pay the price for the fire or for the sexual assault?
Because if he doesn't, he's still a problem.
Do the girls stay at the farm, or do they go back to their lives?
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Banu
what
and-
about Dawn and Banu?
Right.
Like, what happens there? So yeah, Shelley, I think we need a sequel. We need
Yep.
to follow. I don't know. I haven't read the book yet. Maybe the book gives us more.
Which is one of the reasons why I want to try harder to get my hands on this book.
Yeah.
But...
So I pre-ordered the book before it was even released in October when we talked to Shelley. Amazon wouldn't sell me the book. Like, they never shipped the book. And when I asked them, like, where's my book? They were like, we'll help you cancel your order. And I was like, I don't want to cancel my order. I want you to send me the book. And then our local bookstore didn't have it. So we're going to have to special order it through, like, a bookstore to get it delivered.
I've tried looking at Barnes & Noble. Like, I've checked their inventory, like, not every day, but periodically.
Yeah, so we're going to have to, like, special order it through Canada to get it shipped to us.
Yeah, the joke is that we should just move to Canada.
We're really close at this point because we're very invested in the Canadian media scene, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I felt like it ended a little weird.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, you have a very good point that Marty definitely is still a threat.
Yeah.
He's expressing serious violence here.
Yes.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Like, the next sequel could be a horror film where he's, like, on a murder spree.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, I'm kind of curious if he doesn't go to jail, he's a problem.
Yeah.
That'll probably just keep escalating.
I don't know if I'm perpetuating stereotype by suggesting this, but I kind of wonder if Marty has a little crush on Dawn.
Maybe.
And I wonder if maybe he always has.
Oh.
Considering he's, teased Dawn since they were 8 years old.
Yeah.
And again, that's a stereotype. Like, oh, if he teases you, it's because he likes you.
Some people think that's not a good message to send, for sure.
It's definitely not a good message to send, but I kind of feel like maybe that's why he's being so aggressive towards Dawn. Not just because he doesn't accept who Dawn is, but maybe he's personally struggling with who Dawn is.
That's a pretty good solid read. Yeah, I was actually kind of curious about Marty's psychology, and I was gonna, if I ever get a chance to talk to Taylor Olson, and I kind of tried, I would ask that question: is like, what do you think drives this man?
Yeah.
And him having feelings for who was a boy at the time, him struggling with his own sexuality,
right? And
him reacting to that violently, which is a thing.
Right.
Like, people do react that way, unfortunately. So yeah, that's as good as a suggestion as any.
Yeah. Or he's just a really, really, really horrible. I mean, either way, he's a really, really horrible human being.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not sure exactly what his motivators are. That he's so over the top to the point where he's like committing multiple felonies here.
Yes. Yeah. So, yep, that was the movie.
That was the movie.
We finally got to see it.
And I feel like it's definitely a worthwhile piece of media. Yes.
So if you're in the U.S. or even in Canada and you haven't checked out this movie, you can watch it right now on Tubi. Tubi. So yeah, you can finally check this movie out. And yeah. So we have anything else to say?
I don't think so.
No?
Just if you haven't seen any of those interviews that we mentioned, make sure you go and check them out. They are on our YouTube channel. There is a playlist specific for interviews, and you'll find the Shelley Thompson interview there in its entirety, which is the clips you saw during this, as well as all the other stuff we talked about that day. We have a couple of different interviews with Reid Price. We've got that interviews with Bob Mann, all that we mentioned during this. So check all of those out. And if you're looking for other content, we do have playlists covering several different TV shows, including From and Sullivan's Crossing, which we mentioned pretty in detail during this. And who knows, maybe we'll do The Sinner eventually.
Yeah. I mean, we might as well. We talk about it like every other podcast. All right. Well, we would like to hear from you. Stacie, can we reach that?
I can reach on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a copy. You can join the Core Productions membership, which is a new way to support content creators such as ourselves. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.